Hi, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the Gemini full moon that's happening on December 15th. Um, I'm kind of looking forward to this full moon. I think it will be a bit of a relief. It is close to Jupiter, so maybe even some blessings coming in. But if anything, definitely relieving because Mercury will be stationing direct the same day as the full moon. So at least we get some relief from the tension between Mercury going retrograde and this mutual reception happening with Mercury and Jupiter. Definitely telling a huge story there with Gemini and Sagittarius because they are in each other's signs. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but at least looking forward to some relief coming from this moon. So let's talk a little bit about Gemini basics. Gemini is an air sign and it's masculine. Air signs are masculine, right? And we don't just think about that in terms of gender, but more of the duality. So yin and yang, masculine being more expressive, more outwardly expressive, energy moving up and out, doing, versus feminine energy, which is more receptive, more still, allowing and receiving. Gemini is mutable air. So there's this duality also there with Gemini in the sense of mutable sign comes at the end of a season. So Gemini comes at the end of spring. And at the same time that we're still experiencing the archetypes of spring and the weather of spring and plant and animal behaviors associated with spring, we're also dipping our toes into summer, right? The transition from Gemini into Cancer begins with the summer solstice. So Gemini, while we associate it with spring and it's technically spring, we also think about summer, about getting out of school, about building up to this peak abundance of life. And Gemini is preparing us for that energy. So mutable air, I want you to think about as constantly moving, constantly changing. Gemini is the first introduction in the chart and in the seasonal cycles to mutable energy. It's kind of I'm everywhere at once. I'm gathering, I'm collecting, I'm touching, I'm smelling, I'm everywhere doing everything. I'm over here and then I'm across the state with the wind, right? Mutable air. And Gemini is also ruled by Mercury. Which is important for this season, especially because we have a Mercury retrograde. Mercury is the planet of communication, of connection. Mercury is non-binary. He's not tied to a gender. Just very mutable, changeable energy. It is the fastest moving visible planet. He can go from the depths of hell, carry the messages to the heavens. Very aligned with Gemini energy. Mercury also has to do with the details and the details of our everyday life. So Gemini is like this magnifying glass, whereas Sagittarius is like a telescope and is looking broader, wider, bigger, more expansive perspective on things. So Sagittarius season is asking us to expand. It's asking us to dream big, to seek these kind of grand truths, while we have this counterbalance come in of a Gemini full moon that says, wait a minute, don't forget about the details. Don't forget about the everyday, because all of that matters too. And it's especially relevant right now because we have a lot of retrogrades going on, but especially this Mercury retrograde. So we're revising, we're reviewing, we're going back over things that wouldn't have worked anyway if we kept moving forward. So we need to look back at them and find something different, find a new way of doing or being or thinking or communicating. And it can kind of go two ways. It's like with this moon, it can maybe be highlighting where you are kind of caught in the day-to-day. You're caught in these minute details, especially because of this Mercury retrograde. And suddenly you're inspired to like, okay, but what's the bigger picture here? What's that telescope like viewpoint on this? Or you're focused too much on that telescope, you're focused too much on the bigger picture, and you need to go back over those small details. But overall, this full moon is this tension, right? The opposition between the luminaries is creating an opportunity for us to integrate what we've learned since spring, since the new moon in Gemini, but especially over this Mercury retrograde and several retrogrades, to integrate it, alchemize it into something meaningful. So let's talk a little bit about Mercury and Jupiter, because they are the ruling planets of both Gemini and Sagittarius. And right now they're in what's called mutual reception. So that's when two planets are in the signs of each other's domicile. So Mercury is ruling over Gemini. Mercury is currently in Sagittarius, in its detriment, retrograde. Jupiter rules over Sagittarius, and it's currently in Gemini, in its detriment, in retrograde. So there's a big conversation happening between these planets, between Gemini and Sagittarius, and the axis, what it deals with. So let's talk a little bit about Mercury and Jupiter. Mercury, again, is this very fast-moving planet. It's the messenger, it's the connector, has to do with our details and our facts of our everyday life, the connection and the communication. So when we talk about Mercury, we talk about transits, like the transits that we take in our neighborhood, that we take every day. We're using our car to drive around to work, to go to the grocery store, or we're using a train, or we're using the same pathways, these kind of connecting networks that we use to get around our local neighborhood. We're talking about roommates, we're talking about siblings, we're talking about our education when we were younger. It's the archetype of the messenger, the trickster, the communicator. Again, I think of Hermes with his wings on his sandals, delivering messages from heaven to hell, from hell to heaven, back and forth very quickly. Mercury also rules over merchants and thieves, right? There's this trickster element there to communication and to connection. That the facts can even be manipulated. Jupiter, on the other hand, is the big picture. So it's taking these details and facts, taking the network of them that's been created, that connects this, creates this community of information, of travel, of exchange of resources, right? Merchants. And then asking, okay, but what does that all mean? How does it create something larger, something bigger that expands past just the knowing? So we move into this realm of belief, of opinion. When I believe this, or I think this about these facts or about these details, or this is my truth, and this is how it has crafted my morals, how it's created my life perspective and my life knowledge. So Jupiter is the archetype of the philosopher, the explorer, the visionary, right? A philosopher is very well read, knows the facts, right? Has gone to school, but then takes those facts and questions, well, what does it mean? Well, how do I apply this to these greater questions of life? Mercury is thriving on movement, duality, adaptability. Both are very important themes when we talk about both Mercury and Jupiter. Mercury is representing these micro level connections that are creating networks, and Jupiter wants to expand outward, seek meaning, wisdom, create that bigger picture. So while Mercury is gathering these pieces, connecting them all together, making sure that they work, that they are in communication, and the communication is flowing well, Jupiter unites it all into this cohesive vision. Well, what does this mean in a larger context? So Mercury is asking us, what information do we need? How do we share it? Jupiter is asking us, what's the deeper purpose or the truth behind these connections? So right now, Mercury and Jupiter, as I'm making this on Thursday, Mercury and Jupiter are both retrograde, and they're in this mutual reception. They're both in their detriment. This is really very this this has been very influential to Sagittarius season. Jupiter and Gemini, even without retrograde, I think has been a transit I felt very much, and I've seen in the collective quite a bit. So I want to talk a little bit about that and how that's influencing this moon as well. We know that Mercury will be going direct the day of the moon, but leading up to it, and to what can be revealed, I think will really speak to this tension that's been going on between Mercury and Jupiter. So Mercury is currently in Sagittarius and retrograde, and this can feel like being this wanderer, this explorer, and Sagittarius, right? This philosopher, explorer, adventurer, but you don't have a map. So you have these big grand ideas, but you have no idea of like what the next step is and how to get to the next step. There's this idea of blurred communication. So it's like we have all this enthusiasm, but we don't know really how to focus it into like, okay, step one, I do this, and then that will take me here, and then that's how I get to this bigger picture that I'm envisioning and that I'm so enthusiastic about. Can also lead to overconfidence in our ideas. Sagittarius is associated with optimism, again, with having faith in the universe. I'm going to take this big leap and I'm going to jump into something beyond what I know. So I have faith that it's all going to work out. But this can lead to, if we're not paying attention to those details, being overconfident in what we believe, being overconfident in what we think the next step should be. Sort of this idea of like my way or the highway, or assuming without examining. Again, we want to think about Mercury as this magnifying glass. So we don't want to take this big leap without making sure that we understand what's right in front of us and what are the small steps that we can take every day to get to that bigger picture. It's also this idea of difficulty with practicality. Like I said, like having these grand ideas, feeling really confident, enthusiastic about them, but then not knowing, okay, how do I actually do this? What's the next step for this? Sagittarius often struggles with either being too blunt or too idealistic, and then sort of missing the mark because of this lack of like nuance or, again, the paying attention to the details. So I think it's really great that we're having this retrograde in Sagittarius because we get a chance to go back and re-envision and reimagine and look at the details and say, oh, okay, I had this idea, but I do need to get this small thing done first, and then this kind of practical thing done first, or else this bigger vision wasn't going to work. Jupiter in Gemini has been happening since this transit started in June. And this can feel like the scholar in chaos, right? Jupiter represents the scholar, the guru, the philosopher, and Gemini is sort of everywhere, everything all at once, spread out, right? Trying to create these networks of communication and information, but maybe spreading itself a little bit too thin because Jupiter can be this great amplifier. So I've definitely been feeling this information overload, like opening up a social media app, looking at, work that you're doing and just getting super overloaded with new information, refresh this page. Here's something else that happened. Here's something else that happened. It's just been very overwhelming. And so there's this idea of trying to discern what's actually meaningful, trying to figure out what we really need to get to that bigger picture from amidst all this chaos. Also reassessing our beliefs, right? Jupiter has to do with what we believe, what our opinions are, how that informs our morals, our inner perspective on life, our personal perspective on life. So maybe in light of new information that's coming forward, we're going, whoa, actually, it's like fundamentally changing what I believe and needing to reassess and reevaluate what it is that we believe or our opinions about something. And then, of course, communication challenges, Jupiter in its detriment there. There's difficulty in connecting the dots, in actually like finding the coherence and that flow that of information and connection that Gemini offers us. So you want to look at your Gemini and Sagittarius houses to understand where this has been coming up for you and where is this playing out in your life. But these are sort of the themes that I think are informing all Sagittarius season and especially this moon. So let's talk a little bit about Gemini and Sagittarius and this axis, how this plays into the season and informs this moon. Again, we talked about Gemini being like this widespread of information. It's like I'm opening all the cookie jars. I'm very curious about everything. I'm trying to hear a little bit of everything. It's like a jack of all trades. And Sagittarius wants to get deeper and wants to ask the real questions. Well, what does all this mean? And I think when we think about this in reference to nature, Gemini can be really a great example of Gemini energy is mycelium spread out horizontally across the forest floor. And then Sagittarius is like these deepening of the roots that then can expand you past the horizon of the soil and into this great grand tree that's like reaching for the sky. Both very important, right, to the forest, to the trees themselves, but playing different roles. So with Gemini, we want to think about dynamic horizontal movement that ensures that ecosystems are interconnected. In the body, this looks like the hands and arms. We're even thinking about talking without using our words, communicating without using our words. So like our gestures, our mannerisms, how we're moving our arms as we speak, or even think about, photography and how we use our hands and our arms to take pictures, and those pictures are worth 1,000 words. We think about the breath with Gemini and honing the voice. Taurus season deals with the throat, and his previous season dealing with the throat and the voice, like the singing voice, and asking for what we need to make sure that we're getting what we need to sustain life. And Gemini is about really honing our voice and understanding how to communicate, how to be a great orator, a great storyteller, a great speaker. And it's also about awareness, right? If we think about Gemini as that third season of the year, Aries is this burst of life, this birth of life. Taurus is the sustaining of that life. And Gemini is sort of the awareness of like, oh, what's in my environment? What's around me? How do I connect to it? How do I communicate with it? How do I explore it? So in nature, I think of mycelium, as I said, pollinators, bees on the wind, finding flowers, getting covered in literal DNA information, pollination, and then carrying that across a field, across a county, like across these long distances, going back to the hive and doing a dance and telling them about where they found certain types of flowers, certain types of nectar. I also think about how in Gemini season, dandelions go to seed. And so we have the wind carrying literal information, carrying pollen, carrying seeds, DNA, for growth, for exploration. Gemini is late spring. So we think about late spring, again, as this mutable season that transitions us to this summer, the peak of young energy, the peak of fire, the peak of heat, of abundance and life expression. Gemini is preparing us for that abundance. And so it's themes here of growth, of curiosity, of exploration, connection. When it comes to Gemini herbs, when it comes to just the Gemini archetype, I think of gathering, dispersing, and adapting. And adapting being really important for both Gemini and Sagittarius, but specifically adapting for growth, adapting for peak abundance, adapting for the sun, for summer. The shadow of Gemini is a tendency towards superficiality, right? We're spreading horizontally, so we're not going deep. Sometimes we know a little about a lot. And sometimes we need to go deeper than that. We need to know a little bit more, spend a little bit more time with something. So scattered focus or avoiding depth out of fear of what lies beneath the surface. And Sagittarius is all about going deeper, taking these networks of communication and information and going, okay, what can I do with this? What does this mean? What is the purpose of all of this? So when we think about the movement of Sagittarius, because both have to do with adaptability, duality, and themes of movement. But with Sagittarius, we think about migratory movement, moving beyond the horizon, moving beyond our local neighborhood or network, moving beyond what we know into what we believe, into what we have faith in. So it's migratory movement with purpose. This is the time of the year when the birds begin to migrate. The sea animals begin to migrate to warmer waters. You start to see trees go into their dormancy phase, and all the medicine is moving into the roots. Perennial plants is moving into the roots. That's that preparation for the opposite of summer solstice, which Gemini is preparing us for. Sagittarius is preparing us for winter solstice, right? That's going to happen at the start of Capricorn season, which is in just a few days. So everything is going into the roots. It's about expansion, but grounded expansion. We're working from this network of care and nourishment to grow upwards and out. So we're pushing ecosystems toward preparation and survival. In the body, Sagittarius deals with the thighs. So we think about propulsory movement that moves us again, like a big leap past what we know, past where we are, into something bigger and greater. Rules also over the liver. And the liver has many functions in the body, extremely important organ. Deals with abundance, the metabolism of fat, and also dealing with like alchemizing our abundance, alchemizing what we're all this taking in of the abundance that we're eating. Like during Sagittarius season, we're gathering with each other, we're having holiday feasts, we're sharing our stories, we're indulging a little bit right before winter, we're trying to kind of pack on the pounds a little bit to survive. So the liver is helping us metabolize all of that excess so that we don't, we're not hindered by it, right? And our movement is not hindered by it. And also the sciatic nerve, which moves from the hips all the way down to the legs, again, affecting our movement. And both Gemini and Sagittarius in that sense have to do with nerves and the nervous system, which is also something I think during these retrogrades, the nervous system is getting taxed, right? So we want to make sure we're caring for ourselves during this moon for our nervous system. So Sagittarius is migration, exploration, and the roots. Again, we think about vertical movement. It comes in late fall. So we're preparing ourselves for the winter, for this sort of low point of energy, where Gemini was about growing and curiosity and exploring. Sagittarius is also about this exploration, but it's about that inner exploration as much as the outer exploration. So it's about reflection, wisdom, and preparation for the future. Again, we're preparing for winter as opposed to preparing for the summer. Winter is this period of stillness, of dormancy, of hibernation. It's when we're doing a lot of reflecting and we're preparing for the rebirth in spring in that reflection. So Capricorn is the month of making sure that our foundations are stable, our legacy is being protected. We have what we need to grow and move past, grow even beyond our lifetimes. We're creating structures for that. Aquarius season is about cultivating hope, cultivating community to get us through that dark part of winter. And then Pisces is about sort of dissolving into the collective unconscious and the collective dreaming. And so all of these have to do with reflecting on our own inner wisdom and then cultivating our dream and our vision to prepare for this rebirth. Sagittarius is preparing us for the preparation. So we're looking at grounding, expanding, and integrating, alchemizing, like the liver. Like, how do I turn this into wisdom? How do I turn this into something that can help me grow? The shadow of Sagittarius is dogmatism, standing, holding tightly to a belief, and refusing to look at the facts or the details, overconfidence in our personal beliefs, or a desire to escape, right? To move past that horizon, to move something uncomfortable realities into this sort of idealistic, well, it'll all work out. I have faith it'll all work out. But we need to make sure we're taking those everyday steps. We're paying attention to the details to make sure that it does work out. So some key themes for this moon and for Sagittarius season as well, but definitely for this Gemini full moon, is the fractured self and the search for authentic expression. And when we're thinking about that scholar in chaos, Gemini is all these overwhelming thoughts and opinions, feeling overstimulated, feeling overwhelmed by conflicting desires, thoughts, demands. And then we add in that Mercury retrograde. We're going back over, we're revising these mistakes and things that we've, oh, that wasn't going to work. So what do I do now? And then feeling like, oh, I don't know which way to go. I don't know the next step to take, or I don't even know what the bigger purpose is I'm working for. I'm getting all caught up in the next step to take. And so we want to take this chance to recognize these contradictions within ourselves, recognize the truths that maybe we've absorbed from outside sources, from friends and family, from siblings, from the internet, from society, versus what we are really feeling is true, what we really know to be true. But we might be hesitating to express it because we're getting caught up in the like, is it my truth or is it their truth? So this is a really great time to get back to that truth for yourself. What is my authentic truth and how can I express that? Sagittarius season provides this counterbalance for this full moon, which that's what that full moon is all about, brings in some balancing energy, some oppositional energy for balance. What's the larger story? What unifies all these fractured pieces that I'm struggling with and I'm dealing with? And then together with all these confusing pieces, this larger story, with the illumination of this moon, especially because it's close to Jupiter, because Mercury will be going direct, hopefully we get this, oh, I see. Maybe it's not totally clear because Mercury is just now going direct, so we can wait a couple of days, but oh, I see how I can weave this together. I see how this can create a more cohesive narrative, feels authentic, that allows me to expand. This is my next step I need to take. So a really great journal prompt or question to ask ourselves is, where am I holding back from speaking my truth? Because I have a fear that it won't fit into someone else's story. It won't fit into this larger story someone else has for me. Or maybe this larger story I've been creating for myself that no longer really fits. These expectations that are actually restricting me and not allowing me to expand and grow. Another key theme is this interplay between individual truth and collective wisdom, very related to this idea of the fractured self, right? Gemini is thriving on immediate personal truths, the lived experiences, the facts that we're encountering daily. What is it that I know to be true? What is my lived truth? And then Sagittarius connects us to universal truths, to collective wisdom, timeless philosophies, this greater picture of faith and belief. So we're asking ourselves, how does my personal truth, how does what I know to be true contribute to this collective story? What's my unique perspective that the collective needs to hear or can benefit from? And on the vice versa, am I open to the wisdom of others, even when it challenges my personal truth? Can I listen to other people's truths and make room for them within my own imagining and understanding of the world around me? And lastly, we also, I think this is a huge theme for this moon, would really pay attention to, in general, Gemini transits as well, is this idea of releasing the fear of being misunderstood. What if I express myself and no one understands? What if my words fall flat, or worse, I cause conflict, right? Especially because Mars is retrograde right now in Leo. We have this kind of prideful, egotistical battling going on. So there's some hesitancy I think we're all feeling, and I don't even know what my truth is. I need to get connected with it. I need to understand how it fits into this greater story. And then what if I express it and it just falls flat and I'm not being heard? And in that, I want to highlight that the purpose of communication isn't just about being understood. And oftentimes, actually, when we're communicating our truths with others, it's not about being understood. It's about being heard. It's about connecting authentically. You don't need to understand why someone does something or why someone feels a certain way in order to respect their opinion or respect their truth, in order to allow for their truth, allow for their understanding of the world. Um, a lot of times I feel like people are listening to approve, which isn't true understanding. They're going, oh, that's not something I would do, or I don't feel that way, so I don't really understand you, as opposed to honoring that that's your truth, that's your story, that's how, you're feeling this, this is showing up for you. Now, where can we meet in the middle so that I can still support you? And there's also here an understanding that misunderstandings or being misunderstood is uncomfortable, doesn't feel good, it doesn't make us feel good, it doesn't make the other person feel good, but it's not a bad thing necessarily. It's opening up this gateway, actually, this pathway for better connection and for more clarity about your personal truths, about your authentic self and your understanding of the world. So this moon is really offering us a great chance to release old wounds around communication, around moments where you felt unheard, dismissed, or judged, and step into a more open and fearless way of expressing yourself, even if it means that you might be misunderstood initially. Welcoming that misunderstanding, moving through that discomfort to get to this deeper clarity and connection with whoever it is you're trying to connect with. So a great journal prompt or a question to pose for ourselves is, how can I let go of needing to always say the right thing and just speak, just communicate, just say what's true for me, even if it's not the right thing or the perfect thing to say. Now we look at the chart for this moon. See here Sagittarius, Sun in Sagittarius, and directly opposite, we have the moon at 23 degrees of Gemini. You see that Jupiter is co-present here, so very close to the moon. Again, this is why we talk about blessings or abundance coming in, because of Jupiter's co-presence with the moon. And you'll see that Mercury is direct in Sagittarius. And there's also this interesting dynamic playing out here with Venus. And Venus is, in the days leading up to, is in this opposition, direct opposition with Mars. Mars is in Leo, retrograde, causing a lot of difficulty, I'm sure. Again, it's in Leo, so it can be a bit prideful, egotistical. People are a bit bold and brash with their actions. It's a bit combative, this energy, and it's going until end of February. So this is a long retrograde. It will dip back into Cancer, can get a little bit more emotionally defensive during that time. But right now we're just feeling kind of brash, combative energy that's really centered around the ego, and the ego feeling wounded or the ego feeling threatened. And there's this story here with this opposition to Venus. There's, kind of the obvious with Venus and Mars, their battling of the sexes, that feminine receptive energy, the non-doing, the receiving and allowing, versus Mars with the masculine acting and doing energy. But it also, on the day of the moon, Venus will be moving out of that opposition with Mars, which I also want to bring up, that Mars is the great separator, right? Mars is dividing. It's like the scissors or the knife. So we're also working on things that we're working through things that aren't working for us, that we're separating ourselves from. And so there's this story here with Venus as she moves away from this opposition with Mars, sextiling Neptune, that maybe there's also some information coming in from Venus, from the divine feminine, about this Mars retrograde, about this opposition we've been feeling, about this journey of Mars. Just something to pay attention to. And then there's also a square to Neptune in Pisces happening here. Good and bad in a sense. Like, Neptune can have us connecting to our dreams. Maybe we want to do some dream work over the weekend, into next week, feeling more inspired, feeling more connected to our dreams, to our spiritual path. And at the same time, there's still a bit of confusion here. There's this idea of like, oh, we still don't have all the facts. We need to tread carefully. While Mercury can have us feeling like, oh, I get it now. I need to move forward. With this square, it's like, oh, move cautiously, go slow, because you may not still have all the facts. You may not still, things still need to come to light, still need to be revealed to you. And I felt the Sabian symbol for this moon really spoke to that. So I wanted to talk about it as well. This is 23 degrees of Gemini. And the Sabian symbol was kids ice skating on thin ice. So there's this idea of playfulness here and joy, which Gemini is associated with, children, laughter, right? You're having fun. Again, I'm thinking about Jupiter being co-present with the moon, and abundance and joy here. But we're still in these kind of sticky situations. Mercury just went direct. It's still in its detriment in Sagittarius. Jupiter is still retrograde. Mars is still retrograde. We still have other retrogrades going on. It's square to Neptune. We don't have all the facts, so we want to tread carefully. It literally says this symbol speaks of having to tread carefully and watchfully. Situations are likely to come up where you may not know exactly what to do in a challenging situation. So maybe we get some new information come in with this moon, and then it's like, I don't know what to do with this. I still feel very unsure about what all this means. That's okay. We're taking it in stride. And also we're finding some playfulness, right? We're finding some joy. So if you feel like you're on thin ice, you may feel like you're walking on eggshells, planning each step as you go and listening for cracks the entire time. If you don't acknowledge these changes and what information is being revealed to you, what's coming up during these retrogrades, and adjust yourself, you can be at a disadvantage. Beware of blindly rushing into anything. You may get to the point where you can't safely return. Thinking of Mars in retrograde in Leo, we don't want to act too brashly. We don't want to say something too bold. We might get to a place where we've kind of crossed a line. But if you set out to have fun, be mindful, be aware of your environment, you can still have fun skating on the ice. It's thin ice, but it's not cracked. It's not broken. So we're just bringing some awareness to this time. And again, not trying to act too quickly on what kind of news comes in, what's exposed, what's illuminated during this full moon. And I want to bring in some indigenous wisdom. With the Anishinaabe calendar, this is the big spirit moon. And the big spirit moon is connecting us to prepare for this period of winter. Winter is this 3-month span of spiritual reflection, of stillness, of, in Chinese medicine, it's winter is yin, peak yin energy. It's femininity, it's receptivity, it's stillness, it's allowing to cultivate our inner self so that we feel grounded in our inner revolution, our spiritual revolution, so we can act on that come spring. So this moon moves us closer to the darkness, to winter solstice, which will begin with Capricorn season. And winter solstice is the opposite of summer solstice, right? When we're having all this reverence for the peak of summer and the peak of energy. In winter solstice, we have reverence for and in the dark. All right, we welcome the darkness as this period of creation, of understanding that without darkness, we can't see the power of the moon. We can't see the light of the moon, the light of stars. We need the darkness as this period of reflection in order to continue our journey of growth. And there's also the theme here with the moon of understanding that we're responsible for weaving and creating our own stories and dreams. We're co-creators with the universe, right? And Gemini and Sagittarius want to connect us to our imagination, to our thinking processes, to our dreaming, our envisioning. Okay, I collected all this information. I know all these things. Now what can I create that's bigger and broader and more expansive with it? What do I believe with all that I've gathered in my knowing? I've schooled myself. Now how can I take that learning out into the world, maybe to even be a teacher? So we're crafting and weaving our stories and our dreams. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to focus on as we're transitioning and preparing for this 3-month reflection on nourishing and safeguarding our dreams. So really great question to ask ourselves is what vision are you co-creating with the universe, and how do you ground and nourish and protect it? So I thought a really great sort of exercise for this moon could be to journal, and to journal not with a sort of strict prompt or guidelines, but sort of a stream of consciousness flow, like just letting what comes out come out. And so I invite you to grab a blank piece of paper for this moon this weekend. Take this paper, divide it into 2 columns, and on one side write about all the parts of yourself, that fractured self, fractured thoughts, all that's been kind of confused and uncertain and emotional and in flux this season, and just let it flow. How are you feeling about that? What's coming up? What have you been confused about during these retrogrades, during Sagittarius season? What's just kind of been plaguing you and keeping you up at night? And then on the other side, write about what you do know. What is certain? What makes sense? What feels grounded to you? And again, just let that flow. Let whatever comes out, comes out. And then take a moment to reflect on how these two opposing aspects can coexist and can coexist in your future moving forward. So maybe once you get it all out, you kind of put it on paper and you're like, oh, I see now. I'm caught up in all these details, but there is this bigger vision I know makes sense. Let me think about how I can create this bridge of steps to this greater vision. Or maybe it's the other way. I've been caught up in this big vision and I want these big things for myself, but I know I need to do this thing. And I know first I need to start, working on this one project in order to get to that bigger vision. So how do I create that bridge? And again, maybe, you're not going to get all the details on like perfect clarity right away, but it's just something to, I think, release a lot of this tension, a lot of these kind of mangled strings of fractured thoughts and emotions, and come back to, especially as we enter these months of deeper reflection. And maybe the answers will start to reveal themselves as we are released from these retrogrades one by one over the course of winter. Now, talking about some full moon herbs to work with, wanted to focus on Gemini herbs. And the first herb that I think of when I think of Gemini is peppermint. And all the herbs actually we're going to talk about are all in the peppermint family because they have so many key compounds and bioactive compounds in them that really relate to the archetype of Gemini. So the first one is peppermint. And peppermint is pretty common. I think we've all worked with peppermint before. But it's just really great and traditionally has been used for mental clarity. I mean, you think of it literally like this breath of cool air because of that cooling compound of menthol. Can soothe respiratory illness, which can be an issue during this season, clear any kind of congestion, but also congestion in the mind, congestions of thoughts, help promote some mental clarity, some focus, and also reduce oxidative stress in the nervous system. Gemini rules over the nervous system as well, the nerves. So like peppermint is something that teachers would give to me before a test, right? They're like, suck on this peppermint and it'll help kind of wake you up, clear everything out. So it's really great to work with peppermint if you're feeling congested in the mind, in your thoughts. And there's lots of ways to work with this herb because it is so mild. You can cook with it. You could use it to flavor beverages, make a peppermint hot chocolate, make a peppermint tea. You could throw it in a bath. You could throw it in a shower. You could make a steam with it. And overall, just really great for heightening awareness, which we want to do during this full moon to receive those messages, and also supporting eloquent speech. If we feel we need to communicate something or express ourselves, peppermint can help us do that. Another great full moon herb to work with is lavender, again in the mint family. Lavender is really great at calming and soothing the nervous system. You have lots of compounds in there that can help soothe and calm, reduce any kind of inflammation, and also stimulate the respiratory system so we can work with the breath, which is important during Gemini season. During this Gemini full moon. You can also burn lavender, or you could work with the essential oil. Same for peppermint. You can work with peppermint essential oil, maybe in a meditation, or before, again, you have to do something that's maybe causing you some anxiety, before you have to talk to someone about something challenging. Maybe you have a presentation that's coming up because it's the end of the year. Lavender, peppermint, really great for that. And also wanted to talk about lemon balm. Lemon balm also belongs to the mint family. And the essential oil is really, really great for relaxation, reducing anxiety, and supporting cognitive mental functions, protecting brain health. Can just really help us focus and calm our nerves so that we can focus on something, so we can get deep into meditation, again, have a difficult conversation. Traditionally, lemon balm is known as the elixir of life, and medieval healers used it to help with depression, to sharpen the memory, and to soothe, again, some emotional turbulence that would come up. People also used it before they needed to speak publicly or debate, again, to calm your nerves and clear the mind. And these three are also really mild, so you could put them all together as well in like a tea or in a bath or in a steam, however you want to work with them, however they're calling you. Now we'll get into horoscopes. These are just general horoscopes or predictions for each rising sign based on the house that this Gemini full moon will be illuminating for you. If you would like a deeper uh, assessment of how this full moon will play out, you can always email me and we can set up a reading. But overall, just looking at how this moon will play out on that Gemini Sagittarius axis for you. So for Aries risings, this is happening in your third house, the Gemini house. This is focus here on learning, communicating, on your local connections. Again, we think about all those Gemini themes. Who are you connected to? Roommates, siblings, your local community, and also what are you learning that's new? What are you working on? What kind of knowledge are you trying to gather? So there's this theme here of reflecting on how you share ideas, how you engage with your community, with your local network, siblings, family members, neighbors, roommates. And this full moon may highlight some opportunities for you to expand your communication skills, reconnect with your community, with your siblings. And in that illumination moment, that Mercury going direct, we can also see some new perspectives to share. How you shift on how you can share your voice, how you can communicate better. And also want to remind you to embrace play, right? Embrace curiosity. Even if you're getting down to those details, you're refining your message, be playful with it. Can help channel that Gemini energy. For Taurus risings, this is happening in your second house. This is the house of finances, personal values, and self-worth. The second house is the house that dips below the horizon. So we think of it as the descent into darkness, into struggle, into hell, even. And has to do with finances and personal values and self-worth because it's the treasures that we find underneath the surface, right? When we descend, treasures are buried, gems, coins, anything valuable we place underneath the surface, we hide away. But also, like, what are we clutching and holding on to get us through that transformation of hell and those challenges? So this moon can help you reevaluate the emotional weight that you place on material security, on what you're clutching and holding on to and those treasures. It can also bring some unexpected insights about how you value your time and your resources and the balance between external wealth and inner abundance. So what does it mean to be rich in spirit, to have inner abundance, to feel your right to abundance, right? To know that and have that expressed in how you view yourself and what you value. And it's also a great chance for you to reassess whether your current priorities are aligning with your inner value. For Gemini rising, this is a very personal moon for you. This is happening in your first house. So this has to do with identity, with personal goals and self-expression. Again, this is like how you relate to the world and how the world relates to you, how the world sees you, this identity that you're crafting. So this full moon can shine a spotlight on your sense of self, on how you present yourself to the world, on how you're being received, on how you're receiving the world around you. You can feel called to share your ideas more boldly or embrace a new way of expressing your individuality, maybe something you've been thinking on and reflecting on during this Mercury retrograde, and you're like, oh yeah, this is how I can express myself better and show people who I really am. Again, embrace that Gemini curiosity, flexibility as you're navigating these changes in your personal narrative and expressing and communicating your personal story. For Cancer rising, this is happening in your 12th house. This is the house of rest, spirituality, the hidden realm. This is the astral realm, the realm of sleep and dreams. So with that square to Neptune, you do want to definitely pay attention to your dreams and any messages that may be coming through. Maybe get deeper into your spiritual practices during this full moon. Really take time to reflect on what's going on behind the scenes, like getting in touch with that subconscious self, trying to figure out what it is that you don't know. And this full moon may bring clarity to your subconscious patterns or ask you to kind of take a step back and like go into hermit mode. That 12th house is that hermit house. Go back into your cave, you know, get into your spiritual practices again and allow some messages to come through the subconscious. Definitely want to pay attention to your dreams, any kind of intuitive nudges in a certain direction, or anything that's revealing some deeper truths about your emotional and mental well-being, especially because this Gemini Sagittarius axis for you is happening on that axis of health and wellness. Sagittarius is your 6th house, which is the house of the physical body and health issues. So that's all informing your sleep and your sleep patterns and your subconscious and your emotional, mental well-being. So something to pay attention to during this full moon. Leo rising, this is happening in your 11th house. This is the house of friendship, networks, and future goals. So the people that you're aligned to that are helping you to create and manifest your future and what you aspire to. This full moon encourages reflection on your social connections, on that community, and also the role that you're playing in that community. Are your friendships and networks supporting what you want to do and your dreams, that larger goal that you have? And may also present you with some opportunities to collaborate or reconnect, especially some messages coming in, like maybe you get a phone call, maybe you feel the desire to reach out to someone, to connect with someone, like-minded people that can help spark some new inspiration and help you dream bigger for your future. Virgo rising, this is happening in your 10th house. This is the house of career, of reputation, long-term ambitions, your lasting legacy. And so maybe there's been some conflict here between like emotional foundations and creating that legacy for yourself, what your long-term ambitions are, maybe between your home and your career during Gemini Sagittarius season. And so this moon might bring a recognition or a shift in your career path. Maybe you're being recognized or you're recognizing for yourself, oh, I need to go this direction. I need to work on something that aligns a little better with my personal values, with my goals. Again, stay open, stay flexible to new ideas or perspectives that can kind of enhance that sense of purpose or these long-term ambitions that you have. Libra rising, this is happening in your 9th house of travel, higher learning, your worldview, your philosophy, your beliefs, your perspective. So this is a great time to reflect on your beliefs, especially with Mercury in Sagittarius going direct. Maybe you've already been doing a lot of that work on reflecting on, meeting some new truths and how they're shaping your beliefs, shaping your understanding of the world. This full moon can inspire you to explore something new, whether that's planning a trip, wanting to travel somewhere you've never been, wanting to sign up for a new class, or wanting to get into some new form of philosophy that you've encountered recently, or just some new kind of understanding of the world around you. Be open. Don't want to hold on too closely to any kind of like, dogmatism or I believe this. Allow yourself to be open to broaden your perspective and to embrace that Gemini curiosity about how you can expand. Scorpio rising, this is happening in your 8th house, the house of transformation and shared resources and intimacy, close personal relationships that are transforming you, where you're sharing resources. So this full moon can encourage some reflection on your finances, on your financial and emotional bonds with other people, sexual relationships with other people. You can also gain some clarities on issues of trust, some shared investments, or just the deeper aspects of your relationships. And again, I want to remind you that misunderstandings allow for deeper clarity and allow for more intimacy. So some transformative insights could help you release something that's like not working for you, whether that's around like most likely like communicating with someone that you're in very close relationship to. Sagittarius rising, this is happening in your 7th house of partnerships, commitments, and balance. So this can be, one-on-one relationships, inviting you to reflect on how you give and receive, how you share with partnerships, business partnerships, romantic partnerships. Communication here is key. Again, not being afraid to be misunderstood, being open to honest dialogue where you're really sharing your truth, even if it turns out like you hear their truth and, oh, it changes the way you think and the way you see things. That's actually what you want, right? That's how it's going to deepen the connection between your partnerships, promote understanding, allow you to grow. Remember, again, to remain open, and allow that communication to strengthen your bond and your partnerships. Capricorn rising, this is happening in your 6th house. This is a house of health, routines, daily work, the body, what you're struggling with on the daily. So you want to reflect on your daily habits and how they support your overall well-being. Remember that this house reflexes to the 12th house of sleep and sleep patterns and the subconscious and the mental well-being. So there's a conversation happening there between the two. And in general, this full moon can reveal areas where you can bring more balance and more flexibility to your day-to-day routines, whether that's working out, whether that's what you're doing in the office or what you're doing at work with your coworkers. You want to stay curious about new ways to approach work or health that are going to align with this greater vision that you have and the evolving priorities this vision asks of you. Aquarius rising, this is happening in your 5th house. This is the house of creativity, of romance, and personal joy. This full moon really encourages you to reconnect with your passion, creative expression, your expression of self and of what brings you joy, what brings you pleasure. And so you want to reflect on how you share your unique gifts with the world, how you share your joy with the world, how you're communicating that authentic self and your feelings of pleasure and joy. Really embrace opportunities to have fun. I'm thinking about Jupiter being co-present with this moon in your 5th house. Indulge in romance, indulge in some fun, indulge in some pleasurable food or experiences. Let curiosity, that Gemini curiosity, lead you to something joyful and magical, because there might be some insight there with something that you've been struggling with. And Pisces rising, this is happening in your 4th house. This is the house of home and family, of your emotional foundations. So this full moon can really invite you to reflect on your sense of home and security, your emotional foundations. Maybe good to get into some ancestral practices during this full moon. You can gain some clarity on family dynamics or how your living environment is supporting, how your home is supporting your emotional well-being. And be open to any kind of conversations that reconnect you with your roots, again, with some ancestral practices, ancestral veneration, or just establishing stronger foundations for this vision that you're cultivating and creating so that you can expand and grow. And that's all. I hope you guys have a happy full moon in Gemini, and I'll see you next time.